Okay, let's start with what we call hierarchical navigation. So here you see on the top, we have got a navigation bar, and welcome page is the title for the current page. In the middle of the screen, we've got a label and a button. When I click this button, we go to another page. Again, on the navigation bar, we have the title for the new page, which is the introduction page, and a button that takes us back to where we came from. Also, in the middle of the page, we have a link and another back button. So this is what we call hierarchical navigation. You've probably seen this in a lot of applications. The first time you run them, they take you through a tour of how the application works. So you can tap each page to go to the next page. Or another example is the login screen. So when you log in successfully, the application navigates you to the next page. And here's the same app in an Android emulator. It behaves pretty much the same. The only difference is in styling. So on Android, the navigation bar is blue by default. Now I'm going to show you that we have control over the color of the navigation bar, the color of the text. We can even hide it. So let's see how we can implement hierarchical navigation in Xamarin Forms. So in this demo, I've got two pages. One is welcome page, which is the first page of our application. And here we have a stack layout with a label and a button. Pretty simple. We also have an introduction page, which is supposed to introduce the user to how the application works. Again, the exact same structure here. We've got a stack layout, a label, and a button. First, I'm going to give each of these pages a title. And by the way, this is not compulsory to implement navigation. I'm just going to give them a title so you can see it on the navigation bar. So, content page here, we add title, introduction. And similarly, on welcome page, I'm going to add a title, welcome. Now let's go in the code behind for the welcome page, which is our first page. So here's the handler for our button. When the user clicks this button, we want to take them to the next page. To do that, we use the navigation property of the page. So each content page has a navigation property, which is of type iNavigation. Here we're going to use push async method. And we pass a reference to the target page. New introduction page. That's it. Now this method is an async method, which means we need to add await here and then change this event handler to an async one. Now, if you're not familiar with async and await, I highly recommend you to take my C# Advanced course because there I've covered this in detail. There is so much about Xamarin Forms that I need to cover, so I really don't have time to talk about async and await here. Plus, I don't want to waste other people's time who are already familiar with async and await. So this is how we navigate the user to the next page. Now, on the introduction page, again, we have a handler for the back button. Usually, we don't put a back button on a page explicitly because all platforms display a back button on the navigation bar. Plus, Android and Windows actually do have a physical back button. But I put this back button here so you have better understanding of how navigation works. So again here, if you want to take the user back to the previous page, we use the navigation property. And this time we call pop async. Similarly, we're going to put await here and make the method async. So as you might guess, hierarchical navigation uses a stack structure to manage navigation. So we push pages onto the stack and pop the one on top of the stack, which we refer to as the active page. Now the final step. In our app class, where we set the main page, here we need to wrap our welcome page inside a navigation page. So new navigation page, and in the constructor, we pass a new welcome page. This is a requirement for implementing navigation. Now let's run the application. All right, here's our navigation bar and the title of the page. We click next, go to the next page, and back. So we push a page onto the stack or pop the one on the top. Now, what if you want to hide this navigation bar? That's pretty easy. Here on welcome page, we've got a few attached bindable properties that come from the navigation, and we can apply them to the content page element. So navigation page dot has navigation bar, we set this to false. Unfortunately, at the time of recording this, IntelliSense is not picking this up in Xamarin Studio. So make sure you get the spelling right. Now let's run the application. Okay, you can see on the welcome page, we don't have a navigation bar anymore. But if we go to the target page, here we have a navigation bar. So if you want to remove the navigation bar, you have to remove it explicitly on every page. Now, how do we change the color of the text or the background of the navigation bar? For that, in the app class, when initializing the navigation page, we can set bar background color to, let's say, gray. And bar text color to white. Also, on the welcome page, I'm going to remove this line so we can see the navigation bar on the welcome page. And here's our gray navigation bar. Now let me show you something. I click next here. What if you want to hide this back button here? That's pretty easy. On the introduction page, I'm going to use attach bindable properties of navigation class to hide the back button. So here's the introduction page. I'm going to set navigation page dot has back button to false. Let's run the application. So next, look, we don't have the navigation button anymore. However, if we run this application in an Android emulator, even though we don't have a back button here, we have a back button on the Android device itself. So I can click that to go back to the welcome page. The same is true for Windows phones. So how do we prevent this? On the introduction page, which is our target page, we can override onBackButtonPressed method. Now here, if we call base.onBackButtonPressed, this will trigger the default behavior of the device, which will take the user back to the previous step. Now we can delete this line and simply return true. And this will disable the back button functionality. Let's run the application again. So next, I click the back button. Look, nothing happens. Next, I'm going to talk about displaying modal pages.